Lately, pollution has reached such an alarming level that people infected with a mysterious virus keep turning into zombies. Scarier than a last-minute deadline. What's terrifying is that the transformation takes just a few days, or worse, mere minutes, faster than instant noodles. Within a few months, the disease spread across the globe, becoming a worldwide pandemic. If this virus had a concert, it'd be sold out worldwide. It's a deadly plague, and by the time we tried to fight back, the zombies had already become a powerful force, forcing both police and National Guards to retreat. Humanity was officially out of meta. That's when the government imposed emergency lockdowns. Meanwhile, a little boy with adorable blue headphones was sitting in front of the TV watching cartoons. True anime fan energy, end of the world, still gotta finish the episode. Suddenly, the signal cut off. The boy finally looked up, calling for his mom. He searched the house, but couldn't find her, so he went upstairs. Out of nowhere, a girl jumped out to scare him, but he didn't even flinch. Colder than ice, zombies would skip this one out of boredom. She followed him upstairs. As they entered the room, their mother called them over and handed them a phone, saying their dad wanted to talk. The girl quickly grabbed the phone and asked when he'd be back. He said he couldn't make it yet and told her to bring their mom and head to Aunt Carrie's. Orders were orders. Even if you don't like the aunt, you follow mission protocol. Though she didn't really like Aunt Carrie, she agreed, trusting her dad's promise to come pick them up. Sensing her unease, the dad showed her his Lucky Charm bracelet to comfort her. Classic parenting hack. Bracelets against viruses and bad grades. That finally got a smile out of her. The mother, busy packing, still took the time to grab the family album. Emotional passport, check. Just as they were about to leave, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. The two kids froze and ran. Their mom followed, grabbing what she could. When the girl reached the car, she saw her mother being tackled and bitten by a zombie right in the neck. No one ever teaches you how to react when your mom turns undead. Terrified, she crawled under the car. Her younger brother came running but couldn't escape either. After the zombie wandered off, the boy weakly called out her name. Their mother had fully turned into a zombie. Hearing human voices, she turned to attack her son. Abby screamed in panic. Big mistake. Zombie 101. Never yell if you want to live. Her scream gave away their location, and the mother, now a mindless predator, lunged toward Abby. A gunshot rang out, hitting the zombie mom. From under the car, a middle-aged man emerged. He grabbed the girl and tried to calm her. Just then, the boy began to transform. Cassius told the girl to close her eyes and cover her ears. Then he made the hard call and took out the boy. Cold but necessary. A reluctant doctor in a post-apocalyptic ER. 10 years later, the once beautiful city was a crumbling ruin, overgrown with moss. Some areas were flooded, great for moody photos, less so for survival. In the forest, two special ops soldiers, Abigail and Cassius, the man who once saved her, were hunting. Cassius suddenly signaled to halt. He aimed his rifle at a deer and got into sniper position. Seeing her watching, he reminded her how to hunt. Before he finished, Abigail pulled the trigger and grinned, saying she remembered. Cassius gave a helpless smile and walked over to butcher the deer. Typical Gen Z, fast fingers, faster trigger. While carving something into a tree, Abigail heard a noise and raised her gun, but just then, Cassius called her back. That night, he set up makeshift alarms with tin cans before dinner. Budget defense system, 90s edition. After eating, he wrote notes by the fire and opened a map. Glancing beside him, he saw her sketching a portrait of him. Busted, she blushed and flipped the page. Even during a zombie apocalypse, teenage crushes are still top secret. He sighed and limited her to 1 can of water. He told her about his plan to find seed stock. They shared dreams under the stars, because hope's the last thing to die, unless a zombie eats it first. Late at night, one of the traps made a strange sound. Cassius grabbed a flashlight and found fur tangled on the wire. Apparently zombies now get spa waxing. Then came another noise. He rushed behind the horse, calming it before cocking his gun toward the shadows. A zombie suddenly lunged but got blasted instantly. Clean shot, zero hesitation. The gunshot woke Abigail. She looked at the body and together they guessed it was a scout, part of a group of possibly 30 zombies. Undead with military strategy. What could go wrong? Seeing the risk, Cassius told her to pack and move. Next morning they relocated. Cassius adjusted the saddle and called Abigail, who was staring into the forest like she was waiting for something. Maybe hope, maybe just breakfast. Cassius kept teaching her combat skills. Even during chaos, he stayed cheerful and always tried to make her laugh. Post-apocalyptic mentor of the year. They'd considered other paths, but still followed the original plan. Abigail wondered, what if that zombie had been alone? Before they could act, they sensed something. They rode to a cliff. Below, a man was shooting at a zombie, only to be ambushed by another. Zombie movie logic, shoot one, summon two. Luckily, Cassius intervened in time, saving the man from death. They charged into the chaos on horseback. Abigail stood frozen in the middle of the madness. No script, no plan, just real survival. Only when Cassius called her did she snap out of it. He told her to search the vehicle while he calmly ended the wounded man's misery. His eyes were steely. There was no room for kindness. Not anymore. Bullets are precious. Mercy is outdated. He took the man's boots, checked the trunk, and put them on, then covered the body with a tarp. The vehicle's radio crackled, but Cassius ignored it and led Abigail up the hill. Sometimes hitting mute is survival instinct. He knew staying meant more danger, but Abigail hesitated, still clinging to faith in humanity. When some cars appeared, she ran out waving. They aimed their guns immediately. Trust is good until it's staring down a barrel. The leader recognized his missing shoes and snapped, threatening to punish them for looting. Abigail fed up, struck back, and Cassius quickly stepped in to help her regain the gun. Just then, a pregnant woman came out, trying to calm the situation. Classic timing right before the apocalypse. But before anyone could catch their breath, a horde of zombies showed up. Chaos erupted. One guy in a white coat got bitten, and in a daze, turned into a zombie, but not before smacking the zombie that bit him and spitting on it like a final insult. The girl tried throwing a petrol bottle at the zombies, but got ambushed. The bottle hit a car, of course the one with the pregnant couple, and caught fire. Cassius panicked and rushed in, but the explosion launched him backward. Thankfully, Abigail jumped in, opened the door, and helped the couple escape just in time. Amid the chaos, several people were bitten. Some, still lucid, tried to take their own lives to avoid turning, but most weren't that lucky. The infection was faster than their courage. After recovering, Cassius, Abigail, and the couple escaped in another car. Suddenly, a zombie clung to the roof. With sheer brute strength, Cassius slammed it down. On the road, he asked Abigail about their remaining bullets and scolded the couple for wandering around when the woman was already 35 weeks pregnant. Talk about irresponsible parenting. They said they were headed to a town in the northeast. Abigail didn't buy it. Every safe place they'd been to was just another disaster. The car suddenly broke down. Cassius, clearly frustrated, cursed and got out to check. The man followed, announcing the radiator was busted. By the way, he introduced himself as David. David reached out for a handshake, but Cassius wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. Abigail quickly stepped in, shook his hand, and introduced herself and Cassius. The pregnant woman, Megan, also joined in. With the car dead, the group decided to continue on foot. They arrived in an abandoned city called City Sunset and carefully searched an old building using their flashlights. Once it seemed safe, Abigail quietly wiped syrup off her face. Yes, even during the apocalypse, sticky faces are a no-go, while the couple rested. Despite the calm, the place felt too exposed for comfort, so they moved again, finding a sturdier building. Cassius and Abigail checked the first floor, then moved upstairs. Everything seemed quiet. Cassius decided to stay, ignoring the warning note on the floor, because who needs red flags when you have instincts? Elsewhere, the zombie they thought they'd killed earlier suddenly reanimated, now even more rabid. That night, the group shared a tense dinner. Megan offered Abigail food, but she politely refused. Zombie world rule: never let your guard down at dinner. When Cassius returned, the atmosphere got colder than a morgue. He clearly didn't like Megan. Trying to break the ice, Abigail shared how Cassius had taught her everything and that they only trusted themselves. She mentioned they planned to go west and find an island. After setting up an auto alert system, Cassius returned and showed the couple a route they could take. They were surprised. Weren't they all going together? But Cassius explained that he and Abigail were the last known survivors in the area, and zombies might remember their faces. Better safe than eaten. The conversation ended awkwardly. Abigail followed Cassius and found him polishing a rifle. Therapy, zombie edition. When she asked why he wouldn't try the settlement, he just shook his head. He believed it was just like every other failed place they'd seen.
Abigail still had hope. She believed this one might be different, especially if he came along. She reminded him of the lesson he once taught her about kindness. But Cassius, cold as steel, said compassion had lost its value in times like these. Abigail tried offering the couple some bullets, but he stopped her, angry that she was risking both their lives for strangers. Saddened, she accepted his words and went to stand guard on the rooftop. That night, a heavy rain fell. Outside, the zombies they had killed were creeping back like uninvited guests. Megan was fast asleep, and David still couldn't reach the settlement. Frustrated, he gave up and went to find Cassius. He tried making small talk, but Cassius ignored him. Not exactly Mr. Social. When David complimented Cassius on his fighting skills, he got no reply. As he walked away, Cassius finally muttered, "It was just luck." Surprisingly, Cassius then opened up. When David asked what to do when there's no way out, Cassius pointed to a symbol implying the only option left was, well, permanent. A serious question met with a serious answer. He held up a bullet and called it his Plan B. Engraved with his name, of course. dark humor helps when you're staring at the end of the world." David chuckled in disbelief, but from then on, the two began to bond. David revealed Megan had convinced everyone to make this journey, and now she blamed herself. Hearing that, Cassius suddenly promised to help them reach the safe zone, a rare flicker of hope in the middle of the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Abigail was on the rooftop, flipping through the family album. But then she heard a sound. Sensing danger, she quickly packed up and rushed downstairs. Spotting a shadow darting beneath the stairs, Abigail dropped her supplies and grabbed her gun. But the zombie ambushed her from behind, startling her so much she dropped the weapon. She quickly drew her sword, kicked the creature in the gut, and sliced it clean. As she turned to head downstairs, another zombie, bigger and stronger, charged at her. She bolted back up to the rooftop. Just as the creature lunged to bite her, it somehow missed and fell off the building. Cassius appeared and helped her up. A horde of zombies had already picked up their scent and were closing in. Apparently, zombies have a better sense of smell than trained sniffer dogs. When the zombies reached the abandoned house where the group once took shelter, one of them instantly triggered a trap Cassius had laid earlier. The explosion sent shockwaves, making the leading zombie roar in fury. The group flinched at the sound. Soon after, the horde moved on. As they walked, Abigail suddenly remembered this was the place her dad used to bring her, a small civilian airport. She lit up at the memory and suggested fixing one of the old planes to escape. Cassius, ever the realist, shot down the idea, arguing those planes hadn't flown in years. It was starting to feel like a group therapy session disguised as a zombie survival mission. The two argued fiercely, neither willing to back down. Finally, David proposed a vote, and the group decided to give the plane idea a shot. Along the way, Cassius spotted an abandoned car. Inside, 2 people were already dead. He ordered everyone to scavenge in under 2 minutes. Abigail and David checked a nearby building and only found some canned coffee. Turns out, a few people were hiding behind the walls. Meanwhile, Cassius opened the car trunk and found a wheelchair. They moved on, with Abigail pushing Megan, now seated in it. Megan apologized for causing the fight earlier, but Abigail just smiled and shrugged it off. At this rate, they were arguing and making up faster than couples on reality TV. Back at the house, the zombie horde had returned to finish what they started. Abigail's father had once sacrificed himself there, trying to buy time for his family to escape. None made it out. When they reached the airport, they discovered all planes were gone. David suggested turning back, but Cassius coldly refused. David cursed in frustration, only to be calmed down by Megan. Just then, Abigail stumbled upon a hidden bunker. Inside was a plane. Finding a working aircraft in a zombie apocalypse? Might as well have struck the lottery. While David checked the plane, Cassius and Abigail stood guard. He handed Megan a gun, just in case. Then, Cassius and Abigail headed into a nearby building. She stepped into a familiar room and froze at the sight of a shattered photo frame, one that once held a picture of her and her dad. She gently picked it up, memories washing over her. In another room, Cassius found a cap and put it on, maybe to hold on to a piece of who he once was. When even a dusty hat feels like a hug from the past, you know the world's gone to hell. Meanwhile, Megan was stuck choosing baby names, Bella or Benedict. David swore if it was a boy, he'd name it Benedict. Megan preferred Sandra or Samuel. The back and forth annoyed David enough to slam his hand against the plane, only for Megan to soothe him back into focus. Suddenly, Cassius spotted zombies charging toward them through his binoculars. Abigail cursed and ran down. Everyone scrambled to load supplies onto the plane, naming babies while dodging zombies. Welcome to Multitasking Apocalypse Edition. As the undead closed in, the group rushed to start the plane. But with no one experienced in flying, it was far from smooth. A zombie grabbed onto the tail. Abigail kicked it off and rushed to boost the engine. Another one clung to the side. Cassius swung at its head. No use. He had to shoot it point blank. The plane finally lifted off. They'd made it, but only briefly. Smoke started spewing from the engine, and Abigail lost control. The plane went down. Let's just say 5 stars on this flight. Not likely. After waking from the crash, the group decided to continue on foot. They stopped at an abandoned train station to rest. Cassius turned in early, needing strength. Megan noticed David hiding a gun and asked if he was still mad. He gently said no and kissed her goodnight before sneaking off with a flashlight toward the train cars. Abigail was already asleep, and Cassius sat quietly alone. A soft noise made him get up, alert. It was Megan, sneaking food out of hunger. He said nothing and simply helped her open a can. Late-night snacking has never been this stealthy. Megan shyly thanked him and ran off, only to return moments later with a scarf Lender had given her. Cassius accepted it and sat down, visibly moved. He admitted she reminded him of his late wife. He could see the worry and sorrow she was trying to hide. Elsewhere, David was battling his own demons. Bitten by a zombie, the infection gnawed at his body and soul. He wanted to give up, but couldn't leave Megan alone. Meanwhile, Cassius opened up to Megan. He'd once escorted Abigail's mom and brother to safety. The wounds of that day still haunted him. Megan gently reminded him. He saved Abigail, and that's what mattered. Cassius remembered Jimmy, a kind boy he once rescued, only to later shoot him when the infection took over. He didn't want to watch another person turn. One by one, names of the lost flooded back to him. Too many to count. He confessed that losing people had changed him. Megan urged him to believe in Abigail, then handed him her locket. Inside was a photo. He stared at it, stunned, then quietly thanked her and returned to his corner. Sometimes, grief is the only souvenir you get to keep. The next morning, the four resumed their journey in silence. They reached a wide cornfield. Cassius quickly noticed signs of cultivation. Someone was still living here. The atmosphere was momentarily calm, yet an uneasy tension lingered. On the road, David suddenly developed a fever. When Megan came over, concerned, he lashed out at her without warning, leaving her both shocked and hurt. Cassius noticed something was off. His eyes landed on a bloodstain on David's pant leg. Suspicious but silent, he waited for the right moment. Later, he pulled David behind a tree, yanked up the pant leg, and revealed a bleeding wound. Without hesitation, Cassius coldly raised his gun and demanded an explanation. But David said nothing. Cassius simply told him to make his own choice and walked away. He rejoined Megan and Abigail, and the three spotted a small house in the distance. As Cassius cautiously approached, a strange voice called out. Abigail calmly stepped forward, asking for help for a pregnant woman. Suddenly, an old man with a shotgun appeared, blocking their way. With no other choice, Cassius and the group disarmed themselves and entered. The old man was warm and welcoming, but dodged all questions about his wife. While the others had dinner and bathed, Cassius found an old computer full of photos that brought him to tears. Abigail quietly revisited her own memories. Meanwhile, Megan confided in Cassius that her baby hadn't moved in a while. He gently reassured her, though both knew the painful truth. She whispered, "If something happens to me, please protect my baby." Cassius didn't speak, just nodded, but his eyes were full of silent promise. Later, the old man brought out 5 glasses of wine, looking cheerful. He even prepared juice separately for Megan. How thoughtful, right? They all raised their glasses in a toast. He spoke of how human greed had led to their downfall, and how the virus was just nature's way of moving on. Comforting, if you're a sociopath. His words unsettled David. Suddenly, pain shot through David's body from his wound, and he rushed to the bathroom to compose himself. When he returned, he froze. Everyone else had collapsed. The old man stood there with a strange device, designed to torture the infected. Moments later, David too passed out. He awoke to a nightmare, tied up alongside the others, facing the old man now dressed in a lab coat and looking completely insane. The man revealed his sick plan to use them for experiments. Then he released his zombie wife on the group. David fought her off in a brutal struggle while Cassius worked to free everyone. Once the zombie was finally down, David was no longer affected by the device. He quickly helped free the rest. Cassius grabbed a gun to shoot the old man, but the lunatic fled just in time. Then, in a shocking twist, Cassius punched David. He had noticed the bite mark. Megan and Abigail jumped in to stop him. Right then, the old man came crashing through the door with an axe. The group bolted to the car. Just as things couldn't get worse, Megan's water broke. The car raced off in chaos. But not for long. A fallen tree blocked the road ahead. Cassius shouted for everyone to get out. He decided David would stay behind to hold the old man off. Carrying Megan, Cassius ran with Abigail, desperate to reach the settlement. As they neared the gates, Abigail waved for help. No one responded. Inside, a young woman spotted them. Though warned to stay quiet, she chose to act. Thankfully, the approaching zombies retreated. People from inside rushed out by boat to rescue the trio and took them to a room for Megan to deliver her baby. A woman came to comfort Megan and told her to rest. She gently led Cassius and Abigail away. Outside, a few residents exchanged words with them before dispersing. From above, the leader of the settlement, George, watched coldly and ordered someone to keep an eye on the newcomers. Meanwhile, the crazed old man had reached a nearby river, mumbling to David in the distance. Something about how living is still better than dying. What a motivational speaker. The next morning, Cassius and Abigail were summoned to meet George. During the conversation, Abigail caught the gaze of a mysterious young man and seemed a little flustered. After they left, she grew visibly unsettled. Cassius told her they'd leave tomorrow morning, but she protested. They argued until a woman arrived to fetch Cassius. Megan wasn't doing well. He held the newborn baby as Megan gave him the name, Hope. She passed him a necklace and her final wish. He covered the baby with the scarf Megan had knitted. A woman offered to take the child to feed him. Meanwhile, the old man returned to the riverbank, quietly commanding a horde of zombies, ready for revenge. Back at the base, everyone was still enjoying the calm. The young man took Abigail out to explore the lively town. That night, while others slept, Abigail snuck into the basement. She found a device but was caught by the young man. He revealed their plan B. They had wired the city with explosives. If zombies broke through, they'd blow it all up. Behind her, he pointed to a door. It was the last emergency exit. The next morning, zombies breached the base. Abigail frantically searched for Cassius. Her heart was full of dread. At the same time, Cassius entrusted the baby to a blonde woman and sprinted off to find Abigail. When they reunited, there were no words, only action. They fought together to survive. During the escape, a zombie grabbed Abigail. She screamed and struggled. Without hesitation, Cassius charged in and saved her. But as she turned back, her eyes froze. The zombie's wristband had her name carved on it. In that devastating moment, she knew it was her father. Cassius pulled her away before grief could consume her. Elsewhere, the young man was discovered by the townsfolk and forced to trigger the bombs. Flames engulfed the settlement. Cassius and Abigail managed to escape. But before they could breathe a sigh of relief, one of the infected survivors snapped and threatened them. Cassius lowered his weapon to protect the others. At that moment, another zombie charged in out of nowhere. The sunset turned blood red, swallowing the last remnants of what was once humanity's final hope. And that's where the film ends. If you enjoyed this summary, don't forget to like and share to support more movie breakdowns.